Like they call it the doghouse.
So over these last few days, there's been the first official press conferences for the Errol Spence and Terence Crawford fight. One taking place in LA and the other in New York, and that would be the last of the press conferences, I would assume, up until fight week. But I like the fact that they've had two press conferences. First of all, I like the idea of building this fight all over. And LA and New York is the two right places to do it, even though the fight is going to be in Vegas. But either or, I like it. And I like these two press conferences. You know, you've had Derek James and Errol Spence and Bomac and Crawford on the two sides. You also had these other people who are holding the belts. I'm not sure who they are, but it's been good though. You know, you obviously seen them at times kind of going back and forth with each other. But what I always liked about Spence and Crawford is you can tell there's a real respect between the two of them. Maybe after the fight they could become friends, because I do think that they secretly do like each other. You look at the interaction that they both had when they met, I think, or not met, but when they sort of ran into each other in 2000 and I want to say 18 or maybe 19, I'm not sure. And you can tell there was a competitive edge, but a real sort of how would I describe it? A competitive edge, but a real deep line respect. Two alphas is what I would say. And I always really liked that confrontation between those two, because I always felt as if I don't know. I always liked the energy. You know, sometimes you have fighters who go too far and they talk about all this kind of crazy stuff about killing people, but then you also have some fighters who are too friendly. You know, I never liked when Anthony Joshua gave Andy Ruiz his belts before the fight. I thought that was crazy and backfired because he ended up literally taking them in the fight. But you know, you don't want it to go too far. I mean, in boxing, I've never really seen it go that far in my lifetime. I remember switching to mixed martial arts, Khabib and Conor McGregor. It got very dark and personal about, you know, talking about families and stuff that I don't think is necessary. You have obviously the De La Hoya and Mayorga beef that they had a few years back, and again, maybe Mayorga went a bit too far because he's a bit of a lunatic. But those type of things, I don't really mind them. When you go past the line, I think it's an issue. But either or, I like the press conferences though. Both of them, like I said, they both seem confident. People like to do, like I said, body language experts. I don't personally think there's much to read with these two. They both seem very, very confident. They both don't really look phased by the other. They've had two kind of exchanges in both press conferences. You had the in the first press conference, which was in Los Angeles, you saw Errol Spence talking about how Crawford ain't fought nobody, and then Crawford saying, I beat the same guys you beat, and I beat Porter by stopping him, you didn't do that. And he was talking about Spence, about how Crawford was fat and overweight. Well, not fat, but he wasn't training for that fight, and he was talking about how he broke Hellbrook and all this kind of stuff. And I like it, you know. It's a nice competitive edge. There's also Crawford talking about how nobody's been undisputed in two divisions, and Derek James weirdly tried to sort of claim that Teofimo did that, but wasn't really the case. He's a two-weight world champion, Teofimo, but not undisputed in two weight classes. I think sometimes people go crazy with this undisputed thing. It's all the belts, and that's what it should be. However, I do understand that there is a lot of politics that go into boxing at times, and that's why a lot of people don't really care for the the legitimate nature of some of the belts. But either way, it was a fun press conference though. I liked the questions asked by I think, was it Brian King who was hosting? I think it was, or Brian Custer, not Brian King, somebody else. Brian Custer, who hosted the press conference, and he asked some good questions. There was no real bias from him on either side, and the first one I liked. You could tell they both had a good energy. Spence dressed very differently to this one. He's not that I care about the dress sense; they can dress how they want, but it was interesting. I never see Spence usually wears like either suits or tracksuits, but he came with like a shirt with the overalls. It was nice. And then obviously with Crawford, he's a very simplistic guy, Crawford, which is why I think so many people like him. From Omaha, doesn't nothing too flashy about him, and I like the first one, good energy. Second one was quite funny though. So second one, New York, the other day, both guys going back and forth with each other, but there was a funny exchange about how Crawford, Spence refers to himself as the big fish. Crawford talking about reading the fish in and frying it, smoking it, and weighing it. And Spence talking about how you're going to need a very, very big pole. And then talking about how they smoke bud in America, which we all know is Crawford's nickname. There's a lot of fun. This is the type of stuff I like. There's fun exchanges. They both were hitting the one-liners, and I liked it. And I think body language-wise, they both look calm. Spence has a very, very calm demeanor. He's never emotional, and he didn't show that in this fight either, or this press conference. And Crawford's the same. Crawford has never looked like that. However, Crawford, I'd say he rarely ever gets talked over Crawford because he never has a guy who can back it up. I think in this one, you kind of see there's some resistance there, but I don't know. I think it's an intriguing premise that this press conference is set. I do like the fact, like I said, that they are going everywhere with it, not just doing it once and that's it. Trying to really promote the fight. Crawford just went on their Breakfast Club, and I think this fight is going to be massive when it happens, and I think it deserves this sort of his attention. And I personally think that in terms of who won the press conferences, I call it a draw both times. I don't think either one of these guys are trash talkers, and none of them have the edge over the other. Mentally, both guys look calm, collected. If I had to go with who looked a bit more good after press conferences, I think Spence definitely looks more fired up, and he was making also a speech at the start of the last press conferences about these sanctioning bodies, which is good. And I think both these guys look determined. I think Crawford's nature looks like he's never really that fired up, but he is, I'm sure, for this fight. It's his legacy-defining fight. And for Errol Spence, he's talking about breaking Crawford. There's just a lot of narratives that can be spun in this fight. For Crawford, it's his mum's birthday, which I did not realise going into the fight, which gives him an added motivation. There's a lot that you could take from these press conferences, but I always say I don't think you can take what you think about what's going to happen in the fight. I don't think I would ever do that from a press conference, but certainly interesting. I like the energy between two of them, like I said, and I do think that mentally, I don't really give the edge over one or the other. If I were to purely judge who I'm more confident in off these press conferences, I would probably say Spence, because in the last one, Crawford was talking about frying the fish, and Spence didn't say anything. A lot of people would be like, "Oh, Spence has nothing to say," but the fact that he came out with the Bud line shows that he's. I think they're both good talkers. I think Spence is slightly better, but that's only because of his nature. He's quiet, reserved, and those guys usually have the best. They usually have the best rebuttals. Guys who talk a lot, they're the ones who don't really have it. And Crawford has some good lines as well, but I give the edge to Spence so far in the press conferences. But that is irrelevant come fight night, because it's purely about the two fights in the ring. But yeah, just my thoughts though on the two press conferences between Terence Bull Crawford and Errol the True Spence Jr. It's an excellent fight that he's going to get, I'm sure, a lot more media coverage. I hope they do like a face-to-face type thing. They obviously had the gloves are off in the UK, which is always quite fun to watch, but I really want to see these two around the table talking to each other. So yeah, an interest or talking at each other rather than with each other. But yeah, amazing fight. I'm happy we're finally getting it. I feel we're in an alternate reality. We're finally getting this fight. It's real. 2 press conferences, and now they get into training camp. So yeah, just my thoughts on this Crawford and Spence press conferences, and yeah, till next time.